I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm thankful you subscribe and keep showing up. This space is built on your insights. Leave your thoughts and lessons below. Now, cue the tension, cue the truth, let's get into it. When a spouse hears, "I am sick," and answers with how your pain might inconvenience their good time, do not rush past that moment. That is not blunt honesty. That is a value leak. In this story, the sentence that mattered most was not the cheating lie. It was the cold little calculation that came before it. Pay attention to who treats your need for care like bad timing. My name is Curtis Holloway, and the sentence that ended my marriage came out of my wife's mouth while she was folding a white linen dress into a carry-on the size of a briefcase. We lived in Germantown, in a narrow brick row house with squeaky steps and radiators that clanked all winter like they had opinions. It was late October, cold rain pressing against the kitchen windows, and I had a fever high enough to make the room tilt when I stood up too fast. Dana did not look at me when I told her. She rolled a silk scarf, zipped a cosmetics pouch, and said, "If you are sick, stay home. Do not ruin my vacation." I remember standing there in socks, one hand on the counter, trying to decide whether I had heard my wife clearly or whether illness had bent the shape of her words. Dana had a clean, efficient way of speaking when she was annoyed. She never raised her voice at first. She sharpened it. "It is 4 days," she said, glancing at her phone. "I have been looking forward to this for months." She was supposed to be flying to Sedona with 2 friends from college for what she called a reset weekend. Messages. Hiking. Sunday. My chest felt tight, my head full of wet sand. I said, "I may need urgent care." She shrugged. I was 42 then, the kind of man who still polished his shoes on Saturday nights and ironed dish towels because my mother said a home should not look like it had given up. I repaired brass instruments for the Philadelphia public schools, mostly trumpets and trombones with stuck slides and dented bells. When I got anxious, I lined mouthpieces on a towel and cleaned them one by one. Dana used to tease me about it, saying I turned stress into maintenance. For 10 years of marriage, I thought that was a compliment. Standing in that kitchen with chills running through me, I understood she meant I made messes easy for other people. Before we go any further, if you already feel where the story is headed, take a second to like this video, share it with somebody who loves real relationship drama, and subscribe for more cheating wife revenge stories, marriage betrayal stories, and emotional first-person drama like this. And tell me in the comments right now, would you have stayed quiet after that sentence? She left before dawn in a camel coat and sneakers that cost more than my first car payment. I heard her suitcase bump down the front steps. I heard the rideshare door shut. Then I heard nothing but rain and the hum of the refrigerator and my own breathing. Across the street, Mr. Wilkes was already out sweeping leaves from his stoop in a knit cap, because some people in Philadelphia treat weather like disrespect. I sat on the couch under a quilt my sister had sewn and watched the red numbers on the microwave change. 6:12, 6:13, 6:14. I kept expecting Dana to text, "Did you take medicine?" She never did. By 9, my fever climbed higher and my phone filled with her airport photos. Not many. Just enough to prove she was still polished, while I looked like I had been left in the basement. One selfie by the gate, coffee in hand. One boomerang of clouds through the plane window. Dana had that kind of online presence. Measured, expensive-looking, never accidental. In our first years together, I admired it. Later, I learned how much of her energy went into appearing unbothered. I did not know why one particular detail caught my attention that morning, but it did. She had packed a tan leather weekender I always use for anniversary trips. Never girls' weekends. I finally dragged myself to urgent care on Chelton Avenue around noon, because my breathing felt wrong. The waiting room smelled like sanitizer and wet umbrellas. A little boy in a Spider-Man hoodie slept across 3 chairs while his grandmother filled out forms. The nurse took one look at me and said, "You waited too long. Bronchitis, borderline pneumonia, rest, fluids, prescriptions." I sat in the pharmacy line with my coat zipped to my chin and watched 2 teenagers argue over hot chips near the register. Dana did not call once. I told myself she was in the air. Then I told myself time zones were confusing. Then I stopped lying to her. When I got home, our house looked staged for somebody else's life. The throw pillows were straight. The dining room candles were centered. Dana's eucalyptus spray still hung in the hallway. I set the pharmacy bag on the kitchen table, and that was when I heard the soft chime from her tablet on the sideboard. She had left it charging near the fruit bowl. Normally, I would have carried it upstairs and let it rest there untouched. I am not proud of snooping, and until that day, I had never gone looking through my wife's devices. But the screen lit up with a preview before I could look away. The message read, "Landed yet? I got the room on the south side, like you wanted. E." There are moments when your mind offers mercy by pretending not to understand plain English. Mine tried. Maybe it was Erica, one of the college friends. Maybe the south side meant something harmless. Maybe my fever was making sense where there was none. I stood there in the kitchen, tablet glowing against the wood, and had to make a choice. Put face down and stay the man I had always been, or open the message and risk finding something I could never know. I opened it because pretending had already cost me too much. Her passcode was our wedding month and day. Dana loved complexity in presentation, simplicity in convenience. The messages were not vague. They were not flirtatious enough to debate. They were settled, practiced, and ugly in how normal they sounded. Everett Banks. That was E. I knew the name vaguely from her job, some regional hospitality consultant. She had mentioned twice and dismissed with that casual tone people use when they hope you never circle back. The thread went back 3 months. Flight times, private jokes, complaints about me. One line made my skin go cold even to the fever. He will stay home if he is sick. He hates being a burden. I sat down, so suddenly the chair scraped hard against the floor. Shame came first, which surprised me. Not anger. Shame. The kind that asks what stupidity in you made this possible. I kept reading, because by then the hurt was already inside the house. Dana had told her friends she was traveling with them, but the confirmation in her email said 2 guests, 1 king room, Red Rock View. Everett had booked the spa under her married last name, which felt almost efficient in its cruelty. Outside, a SEPTA bus sighed to a stop at the corner. Someone laughed on the sidewalk. My whole block kept moving while my marriage turned into paperwork. Once I had evidence in front of me, other moments rearranged themselves. Dana took calls on the back stoop because the kitchen had bad acoustics. Dana bought new perfume and said it was part of promotion. Dana returned from team dinners with lipstick still perfect and her smile already tired of me. She had not become a stranger in one afternoon. She had been shifting away for a while, and I had been translating every clue into something less painful. I blamed her hours, my schedule, stress, the economy, city traffic, anything but what was right there. Illness stripped me of the energy to keep translating. I did not call her from that chair, though I wanted to hear her scramble. I wanted one honest stutter. Instead, I made tea I could barely taste and stare at the rain dragging leaves along the curb. My Aunt Gwendolyn used to say a person shows you their truest nature when they think your comfort cost them something. Dana had just shown me hers twice in one day. Once when she dismissed my sickness, and again when she counted on it making me easier to deceive. By evening, I had decided on one thing. I would not confront a lie until I understood its shape and its price. The next morning, I walked 2 slow blocks to Vernon's barbershop because staying in that house alone with my thoughts felt like suffocating. I did not need a haircut. I needed a familiar noise. Vernon's place had dominoes on a card table in the back, a radio-tuned load of old souls, and men who argue about Eagles football like the city charter depended on it. I sat in the waiting chair with a knit cap pulled low and a paper cup of coffee turning warm in my hands. Vernon looked at me in the mirror and said, "Curtis, you look bad." I told him, "I finally feel clear." That was the truth. Money was not the heart of my marriage, but it was the place where Dana's assumptions lived most comfortably. She earned well, but unpredictably. I earned steadily, always. I paid the mortgage because the house had been mine before the marriage. I covered utilities, insurance, groceries, and most emergencies because it kept the peace. We had one joint travel account for trips and holidays. Dana liked telling people we were spontaneous, but that account existed because I had a cigar box hidden inside an old saxophone case where I put side job cash from instrument repairs. When I checked it that afternoon, most of the Sedona trip had been funded from money we saved for our 10th anniversary. That was my second real decision point. I could blow up, drain accounts, call every relative, post screenshots. Plenty of people would cheer that kind of spectacle afterward and call it strength. I did not do it, partly because I was raised better and partly because impulsive anger usually creates cleanup work for the person already hurting. I called my bank instead. I removed my credit card from the digital wallet Dana used for travel incidentals. I moved my next paycheck to a new account. I left the joint checking alone except for documenting every transfer. My goal shifted from punishment to protection. That distinction saved me later. By sunset, the first call came. Dana's name glowed on my phone while I was spooning Ken's soup into a bowl and coughing hard enough to bend at the waist. I let it ring out. Then came a text. Did you remove your card from a resort file? No greeting. No question about my lungs. No apology. Just logistics. I stared at the words until they blurred. I wrote back, use the card you planned for your vacation. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then, stop being dramatic. I looked around our neat kitchen, at the rosemary plant she could never keep alive but kept buying anyway. And I laughed once, weakly, bitterly. Quiet can still carry contempt. She called again 5 minutes later. I answered because I wanted to hear whether guilt sounded different from irritation in her mouth. It did not. The front desk cannot keep charging incidentals to a remove card, she said. Why would you do that while I am here? I leaned against the sink and said, why are you there with Everett? Silence. A sharp inhale. Somewhere behind her, I heard water splashing and a door close. Then she said, you went through my tablet? Not denial, not confusion, just offense. That told me everything. You told me not to ruin your vacation. I said, I am trying not to interrupt it. Dana recovered fast. She always did. This is not what you think, she said, voice dropping into that corporate calm she used when she wants to sound reasonable and make you sound unstable. Everett is here for work meetings and has extended the stay. She stopped because she even heard how flimsy it sounded. You booked one room, I said. You used our anniversary money. She snapped then. I cannot deal with this while I am away. That line might have hurt me more than the messages. Not because it was new, but because it was so completely her. My pain had to wait until her convenience returned. I slept badly that night, waking every hour damp with fever, then shivering. Each time I checked my phone, there was another version of the same message. We will talk when I get back. Do not make this bigger. You are overreacting. At 3 a.m, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the framed wedding photo on the dresser. Dana in ivory satin, chin lifted, smile small but luminous. Me in a dark suit, looking like a man who believed steadiness would be enough. I turned the photo face down, not for drama. I just could not bear being watched by my own younger faith. Saturday morning, my sister Rochelle came by with ginger tea oranges, and enough concern to make me realize how starved for tenderness I had become. Rochelle was older than me by 6 years and possessed the kind of practical kindness that never announces itself. She set groceries on the counter, touched my forehead, and said, you need rest and honesty. Which one are you avoiding? I showed her the messages because I was too tired to protect Dana's image anymore. Rochelle read them without performing outrage. She only said, you do not owe silence to a person who counted on your decency as cover. Then she washed my dishes like this was any other hard weekend. Dana's friends started circling by late afternoon, though not directly. One text from a woman named Elena asked whether my card had glitched because the spa desk was asking for a different one. Another wanted to know if Dana should just use the joint account. That was how I learned she had not told them the truth. To them, this was a financial misunderstanding, not a marriage split open at altitude. I ignored the messages, but the pattern mattered. Dana wanted the benefits of secrecy and the rescue of transparency. She wanted me to be invisible when she betrayed me and instantly available when the bill arrived. That was our marriage in one ugly equation. By the third day, my breathing improved enough for me to think in full paragraphs instead of broken reactions. I took the 23 bus downtown to meet an attorney Rochelle recommended, a tidy woman named Denise Parker, whose office sat above a tax preparer and a beauty supply store. Denise wore square glasses and listened without interrupting, which in that moment felt like luxury. I laid out the timeline, the texts, the transfers, the house deed, the joint accounts. She asked careful questions. "Are you trying to hurt her?" she said. "Or are you trying to keep yourself from being harmed further?" It was the cleanest question anybody had asked me. I told Denise I did not want theatrics. I wanted clarity. She nodded like she had been waiting for me to say exactly that. Because the house had been mine before the marriage, because I had records, because there were no children, because I had not done anything reckless with share funds. The path forward was ugly but straightforward. Do not destroy evidence, she said. Do not bait her. Do not let guilt talk you into funding your own humiliation. I wrote that sentence down on the back of a church bulletin in my coat pocket. Sometimes legal advice sounds almost like scripture when your life has started slipping sideways. Back home, I packed a small box of things that mattered more than they looked. My grandfather's Hamilton watch, my mother's recipe cards with grease stains on the edges, the silver mouthpiece and the trumpet I played in high school, the mortgage folder, my tax records, the little blue mug with a cracked handle that had survived 3 apartments and 1 flood. I took the box to Rochelle's place in Mount Airy because grief makes people unpredictable, and I had begun to understand that Dana's panic might arrive dressed as regret. On the way back, I bought soup from the corner store and watched 2 schoolboys race scooters through fallen leaves. Dana returned on Sunday night just after 9. I heard her key in the lock while I was sitting at the dining table repairing a bent clarinet ligature under the yellow lamp. I had not touched alcohol all week because I wanted my mind clean when she walked in. She dragged her suitcase over the threshold, smelling faintly of airport air, expensive sunscreen, and that perfume she had started wearing for work events. She looked at me the way people look at a room after a storm, checking what survived. "So," she said, taking off her coat slowly, "we're doing this now?" I set down my tools and said, "We already started." Dana tried normal first. That was always her instinct. She washed her hands. She asked whether the mail had come. She opened the refrigerator and frowned because I had not bought the yogurt she liked. Then she turned around and saw my expression, and the performance dropped. "You had no right to go through my messages," she said. "You left your tablet on the sideboard." I replied, "It came to me." She laughed once, a hard little sound. "You act like you found religion. You found a notification." I looked at her sunburned cheeks and said, "I found a room reservation, 3 months of lies, and a wife who did not ask if I could breathe." What followed was not a confession. I wish people would stop imagining confession as the natural response to being caught. Dana minimized first, then redirected, then accused. Everett was a mistake. Everett meant nothing. Everett understood her ambition. Everett listened when I had been distant. I heard my own flaws listed back to me in neat order, and for a few dangerous minutes I almost accepted them as the reason for her choices. I worked late. I was tired. I had become predictable. Then I remembered the kitchen, my fever, her voice saying I was about to ruin her vacation. My shortcomings did not book her king room. "Did you sleep with him?" I asked, and even then my voice surprised me by sounding calm. Dana closed her eyes for a second, then opened them and said, "That is not the point. People say that when the point is exactly what they cannot bear to answer. It is one of them," I said. "Another point is the money. Another is you tell me to stay home like I was a stain on your weekend." She looked toward the window. Outside, somebody down the block was arguing loud enough to carry. A siren passed somewhere closer to Broad Street. Dana crossed her arms and said, "I was overwhelmed." I nodded. "I noticed." We slept in separate rooms that night. She in the guest room we mostly used for storage. Me in our bed, because I was done being the one who relocated for someone else's wrongdoing. The house changed shape immediately. Doors opened and shut more carefully. Footsteps got quieter. The next morning, Dana made coffee and left a mug outside my door like a peace offering from somebody who still believed routine could patch a cracked beam. I did not drink it, not to be cruel, because coffee from her hands no longer felt simple. That is one of betrayal's ugliest side effects. It turns ordinary kindness into a suspicious object you have to inspect before touching. For the next week, Dana cycled through strategies. One night, she was defensive. You are acting like this was a whole second relationship. Another night, she was soft. I have been unhappy and did not know how to say it without hurting you. Then came the practical version. If we get counseling, can we keep this between us? That request told me more about her than tears had. Privacy mattered when her reputation felt vulnerable. I told her I would consider counseling after she gave me full financial transparency, full communication transparency, and one plain answer to one plain question. Why did my sickness annoy you more than my absence would have? She had nothing. She started telling her family a trim version of events before I told anyone else. I know because her mother, Ms. Laverne, called me on Thursday evening while I was taking apart a dented trumpet valve at the dining table. Her voice was careful, older church lady careful, but I could hear the strain under it. Dana said y'all had a terrible argument over her trip and some money, she said. I looked at the brass spring in my hand and made my third big decision. I could preserve Dana's image one last time, or I could stop carrying what she had dropped. Ask her whoever Banks is, I said. There was a long pause. Then Ms. Laverne asked, very quietly, Are you saying my daughter went away with another man? I could have wrapped it in softer language. I could have made her drag the truth out inch by inch. Instead, I said, Yes. And before she left, when I was sick enough for urgent care, she told me not to ruin her vacation. On the other end, the silence changed shape. It made me sad, not just for me, for the idea of the daughter she thought she had raised. I see, she said after a while. I did not know what to say. That makes two of us, I answered. Dana was furious when she learned I had told her mother the truth. She came into the kitchen with her jaw set and both hands flat against the counter, like she was bracing to lift it. You humiliated me, she said. That line came so quickly it felt rehearsed. No, I said, I declined to keep lying for you. She stared at me. Families do not need every detail. Families also do not need false ones, I replied. She turned away and knocked the dish towel off the stove with her hip. Not an accident. Just pressure seeking somewhere to go. I picked it up after she left because habits outlive hope. That Saturday, there was a fish fry in the basement at New Hope Baptist for the Youth Music Fund. And I went because sitting home with Dana was beginning to feel like living beside a down power line. The church basement smelled like grease, lemon cleaner, and pound cake. Folding chairs scraped. Kids ran through the corridor in socks. My friend Deacon Miles handed me a plate and said, You look like a man deciding whether to save a house or let it burn. I smiled despite myself. I am trying to stop pretending I can live in smoke, I said. He did not ask for details. Good men know when not to. Dana showed up there near the end, dressed too well for the room, in a fitted camel sweater and gold hoops, carrying a pan of peach cobbler she had absolutely not baked. I could tell by the bakery box she had forgotten to hide in the recycling bin at home. She moved through the basement like she was reclaiming territory, hugged aunties, smiled at choir members, touched my shoulder lightly as though we were a slightly tired but intact couple. I understood then why she had wanted secrecy. Public familiarity was one of her strongest currencies. If she could keep spending it, maybe the account of her choices would never fully come due. At first, I said nothing. I watched her ask Sister Bernice about her knees and compliment a teenager's solo from the previous Sunday. Then I heard Dana telling one of her cousins, in a voice pitched just loud enough to travel, Curtis took the trip way too personally because I did not cancel when he had a cold. A cold. My illness was reduced for convenience. My marriage was reduced for image. That was the moment my fourth and final decision arrived. I could walk away and keep my dignity private, or I could let her build a public story out of my silence. I set down my fork and chose the truth. I did not make a scene. I did not shout across the fellowship hall. I walked to the table where Dana stood with her cousin Nicole and two church mothers and said it was bronchitis, not a cold. Urgent care documented it. Also, you did not go with your girlfriends. You went with Everett Banks. The room did not explode. Real life almost never does. It just goes suddenly still. Dana's cousin blinked. Sister Bernice pressed her lips together. Dana's whole body locked from the neck down. "Curtis!" she said sharply, as if my tone were problem. I answered, "You have had plenty of time to frame me. I am done lending you mine." Dana walked out before anybody asked a second question. I stayed long enough to help stack chairs, because that is the kind of man I am, even heartbroken. Later that night, she accused me of turning church people against her. I told her church people had turned against dishonesty all on their own long before either of us was born. She cried then, but there was anger braided through it. "You made me look cheap," she said. I remember staring at her in our bedroom doorway and thinking that after everything, her deepest fear was still not what she had done. It was how clearly other people might now be able to see it. The following week, she shifted again. Less defiance, more pleading. She cooked my favorite salmon croquettes one night and burned them because she had never actually learned the recipe, only the presentation. Another evening, she sat on the edge of the couch and said, "I need you to understand I've been under pressure." I said, "Pressure did not push you into bed. Pressure did not tell you to dismiss my lungs." It sounds cold now, but by then I had moved past a stage where pain begs to be handled gently. I was in the stage where plain language felt cleaner than sympathy. Dana was hearing herself without her usual filters for the first time. She asked for counseling again. I thought about it seriously for 2 days. That is worth saying because I do not want to pretend clarity arrived like lightning and stayed bright. It did not. I love my wife, or at least a version of her that had shared jokes with me in hardware stores and danced barefoot in the kitchen when old Anita Baker records played. 10 years is not a shirt you shrug off. But every time I considered staying, the same image returned. Me in that rain-gray kitchen, shaking with fever, while she protected her leisure from my humanity. Cheating wounded me. That moment reorganized my respect for her. I met Denise again the next Tuesday and told her I was ready file. There is no dramatic music when you choose the end of something long. There is fluorescent light, copier noise, and a pen that skips once before it starts writing properly. I signed where she indicated. We discussed temporary arrangements, property boundaries, and timelines. On the bus ride home, a teenager played music too loud through his phone speaker, and an older woman muttered every complaint directly to the universe. I sat there with legal papers and a folder on my lap and felt strangely quiet inside, not triumphant, not destroyed, just done with arguing against what had already become clear. When I told Dana, she stared at me as if I had broken an unspoken contract she thought applied forever. "You are really filing," she said, "after everything?" That question almost knocked the breath out of me because of how backward it was. After everything she had done, she still experienced my response as a shocking event. "Yes," I said, "after everything." She cried hard then, real tears this time, unpretty and unstructured. She said she loved me. She said Everett was over. She said I was her home. I believed the last part more than the rest, and that was exactly why I could not stay. I was tired of being useful before being cherished. Dana moved into her cousin Nicole's townhouse in West Oak Lane 3 weeks later. She packed neatly, labeling boxes in black marker, because even collapse in her hands wanted to look organized. I stayed out of her way except when signatures were needed. On the last morning, she stood in the hallway beside the framed wedding photo I had never turned upright again and said, "I honestly did not think you would walk away." I nodded because there was nothing left to debate. That had been our whole marriage in one sentence. She believed my endurance was endless. She mistook my steadiness for permission. I opened the door and let the movers carry that misunderstanding out. Winter came down hard that year. The radiator banged. The sidewalks iced over. The corner store started selling knit gloves by the register next to batteries and lottery slips. I went to work, came home, cooked for one, and learned the difference between loneliness and peace. They are not cousins. They only look alike from far away. Rochelle visited on Sundays. Vernon kept a chair open for me on Saturdays. At church, people did not gossip to my face, which is its own Black American courtesy. I started therapy with a man in Mount Airy who asked inconvenient questions in a calm voice. It helped. So did sleeping without dread in my chest. By spring, the trumpet section at one middle school sent me a thank you card covered in crooked signatures and glitter pen, and I pinned it to the fridge where Dana used to hang resort magnets from places we could not really afford. One afternoon, I found that blue cracked mug at the back of the cabinet and made coffee in it just because I could. The house sounded different with only my footsteps in it. Better, somehow, cleaner. People asked what the real betrayal was, the affair or the lie. I say it was smaller and meaner than both. It was being treated like an inconvenience the moment I needed care, as though my humanity threatened her plans. If this story hit you hard, do not leave without liking this video, sharing it with someone who understands how betrayal really unfolds, and subscribing for more powerful relationship drama, cheating wife revenge stories, and first-person emotional narration like this. And in the comments, tell me the real breaking point for you. Was it the affair, or was it the moment she treated sickness like an inconvenience? The part people remember is the affair, but I hope you remember the quieter warnings. The way Dana turned sickness into an inconvenience. The way she wanted privacy for herself and silence from Curtis. The way she panicked most when her image slipped. Betrayal rarely starts with a hotel room. It usually starts with contempt. Once that shows up, every later consequence has somewhere to land. The end.